Richard Francis Burton and the Veiled World of Arabia, Travel, Curiosity and Knowledge at the Edge of Empire. Introduction: A World Partially Seen. In the middle decades of the 19th century, much of Arabia remained, for Europeans, a land more imagined than known. It existed in fragments, Quranic allusions, medieval travel accounts, classical geography filtered through Renaissance scholarship, and the occasional report from merchants or diplomats stationed on the Red Sea littoral. Mecca and Medina, the spiritual heart of Islam, stood apart as zones of near-total exclusion. They were not merely unmapped spaces, but consciously guarded ones, protected by religious law and communal vigilance. For European readers shaped by the Enlightenment ideal that knowledge should know no forbidden frontiers, this exclusion exerted a powerful intellectual pull. Sir Richard Francis Burton's personal narrative of a pilgrimage to El-Medinah and Meccah, 1855-56, emerged from this context. The book has often been read as an adventure story, an ethnographic curiosity, or a scandalous tale of disguise and daring. Yet it is also something more complex, a sustained attempt to render an unfamiliar religious and social world intelligible to a Western audience, using the tools available to a 19th century polymath: philology, observation, comparison, and narrative craft. This essay offers a long-form summary and interpretation of Burton's Arabian journey and his narrative, focusing on what he saw, how he understood it, and why his work mattered. Rather than treating the text primarily as an instrument of imperial aggression or celebrating it uncritically as heroic exploration, the aim here is balance, to situate Burton as a figure of his time, shaped by imperial structures, but also driven by genuine intellectual curiosity and an unusual degree of cultural immersion. Read carefully. Burton's work reveals not only the mindset of Victorian Europe, but also a remarkably detailed snapshot of the Hijaz in the 1850s, its pilgrims, its streets, its rituals, and its tensions. Burton the linguist and cultural apprentice. Richard Francis Burton was not a typical Victorian traveller. Before Arabia, he had already immersed himself in India, mastering Hindustani and several regional languages, studying Islam at close quarters, and cultivating a reputation for crossing social and cultural boundaries that many of his contemporaries avoided. Unlike travellers who relied heavily on interpreters and colonial intermediaries, Burton sought proximity. He believed language was the gateway to understanding, and that without it, observation remained superficial. By the time he conceived his pilgrimage to Mecca, Burton had spent years studying Arabic, Islamic law, and Muslim ritual practice. His decision to perform the Hajj disguised as a Muslim, Sheikh Abdullah, was not undertaken lightly. It required mastery of prayer, gesture, bodily comportment, and theological nuance. In his narrative, Burton emphasizes again and again that a single error, a mispronounced phrase, an unfamiliar ritual detail, could have meant exposure and death. Whether or not one accepts all of his claims about danger at face value, the extent of his preparation is undeniable. This preparation shaped the tone of the personal narrative. Burton writes not as a tourist glimpsing surfaces, but as someone attempting to pass, to belong temporarily, and therefore to see from within. His gaze remains that of an outsider, but it is a deeply informed one, grounded in sustained study rather than fleeting encounter. The journey begins from Egypt to the threshold of the sacred. Burton's journey to Arabia began in Egypt, then under Ottoman rule, but increasingly influenced by European powers. Cairo, already familiar to travellers, served as the staging ground where pilgrims from across the Muslim world assembled. Burton's descriptions of Cairo are revealing not for novelty, but for contrast. This was a city known to Europeans, and thus a point of departure from the familiar into the unknown. From Egypt, Burton joined a caravan across the Red Sea to the port of Yanbu. his account of the voyage captures the transitional nature of pilgrimage. People of vastly different backgrounds, Africans, Indians, Central Asians, Arabs, temporarily bound together by a shared religious purpose. Burton notes the social hierarchies, the frictions, and the solidarities that emerged in these liminal spaces. Yanbu itself appears in Burton's narrative as rough, pragmatic, and watchful. It was not a city of grandeur, but of function, a gateway. Here, Burton's observations shift from general travel writing to something closer to ethnography. Details of dress, dialect, trade, and local authority structures are recorded with care. The sense is of a frontier town balancing commerce, piety, and suspicion. Medina, the sacred city observed from within. Medina occupies a central place in Burton's narrative. Unlike Mecca, which he approached with trepidation and awe, Medina appears as a space where he lingered, observed, and reflected. His descriptions of the Prophet's mosque are among the most detailed European accounts of the period. He notes architectural features, ritual movements, and the emotional atmosphere of the space. Crucially, Burton distinguishes between different kinds of piety. He observes the quiet devotion of some pilgrims alongside the performative religiosity of others. He resists, at least partially, the temptation to treat Muslim worship as a monolith. Instead, he presents it as a spectrum of motivations: faith, habit, social expectation, and personal longing. Medina also becomes a site where Burton reflects on Islamic history. He situates the city within the early narrative of Islam, drawing on his knowledge of Arabic sources. While his interpretations sometimes reflect 19th century assumptions, they also demonstrate a serious engagement with Islamic historiography rather than mere repetition of European stereotypes. The road to Mecca: danger, discipline, and performance. The journey from Medina to Mecca forms the narrative's dramatic spine. Burton emphasises the dangers of the route: Bedouin raids, disease, exhaustion, and the constant risk of exposure. Whether exaggerated or not, these dangers serve a narrative function, heightening the sense of pilgrimage as ordeal. At the same time, this section reveals the intensely performative nature of Burton's disguise. He is constantly aware of his body, how he walks, prays, reacts to pain, or expresses emotion. The personal narrative becomes in places a study of identity as something enacted rather than innate. Burton's success depends not only on knowledge, but on emotional discipline. The Bedouin appear frequently in this part of the text, portrayed as both guardians and threats. Burton's view of them is ambivalent. He admires their endurance and independence while criticising what he sees as predatory behaviour. These passages reflect broader 19th century debates about nomadism, civilization, and social order. Mecca, the forbidden city described. Burton's arrival in Mecca marks the culmination of the journey and the emotional high point of the narrative. His description of the city is careful, almost restrained, as if aware of the weight of expectation surrounding it. He describes the Kaaba, the Great Mosque, and the rituals of the Hajj with precision rather than sensationalism. What stands out is Burton's attentiveness to atmosphere. Mecca is not presented merely as a physical space, but as a convergence of humanity. Pilgrims from across the Islamic world bring with them languages, customs, and grievances. Burton notices regional differences among pilgrims, particularly those from South Asia, Central Asia, and Africa. The rituals of the Hajj, the Tawaf, the Sa'i, the standing at Arafat, are described step by step. Burton refrains from theological mockery, instead emphasising the psychological power of collective movement and shared purpose. Even when he remains intellectually detached, his writing acknowledges the emotional intensity of the experience. observation, classification, and the Victorian mind. Throughout the personal narrative, Burton classifies. He categorises peoples, dialects, sects, and temperaments. This impulse reflects the intellectual habits of his age, shaped by anthropology, philology, and comparative religion. To modern readers, such classification can feel reductive, even troubling. Yet it also represents an attempt to impose order on overwhelming diversity. Burton's judgments are not uniformly hostile. He praises intellectual sharpness, hospitality, and resilience where he finds them. At the same time, he often interprets social problems, poverty, violence, disorder, through cultural or moral frameworks typical of 19th century thought. These interpretations reveal as much about Victorian assumptions as about Arabian society itself. Arabia as a connected world. One of the most valuable aspects of Burton's narrative is his portrayal of Arabia not as an isolated backwater, but as a node in a vast trans-regional network. The Hijaz connects West Africa, South Asia, Central Asia, and the Ottoman heartlands. Ideas, money, and stories circulate alongside people. This interconnectedness challenges simplistic notions of a static Islamic world. Burton repeatedly notes change, new weapons, shifting alliances, economic pressures. Arabia appears as a living, adaptive region responding to global forces, even as it preserves powerful traditions. 4. Knowledge, power, and curiosity. It would be naive to separate Burton's work entirely from the imperial context in which it was produced. His knowledge circulated within British institutions, and his observations informed policymakers as well as general readers. Yet it would be equally reductive to see the personal narrative solely as a manual of control. Burton was driven by a belief, shared by many 19th century intellectuals, that understanding other cultures was intrinsically valuable. His willingness to live among Muslims, to adopt their practices, and to endure hardship reflects a seriousness often absent in more superficial travel writing. The tension between curiosity and power runs through the text. Burton seeks to know, but knowledge is never neutral. The personal narrative stands at this intersection, embodying both genuine engagement and the asymmetries of its time. Conclusion. Reading Burton today. To read a personal narrative of a pilgrimage to El-Medinah and Meccah today is to encounter a layered document. It is an adventure story, an ethnographic record, a product of Victorian science, and a window into the Hijaz on the eve of profound global change. Approached with care, Burton's work rewards the reader with detail, texture, and insight. It reminds us that Arabia was never unknown to itself, only to outsiders, and that the act of making it known was shaped by both admiration and misunderstanding. Rather than condemning or celebrating Burton outright, a balanced reading recognises him as a transitional figure, a bridge between older Orientalist fantasies and more immersive, if still imperfect, forms of cross-cultural inquiry. His journey into the sacred cities did not simply unveil Arabia to Europe, it also revealed the limits and possibilities of understanding across deep cultural divides. In that sense, Burton's pilgrimage remains relevant, not as a template to follow, but as a historical mirror reflecting how knowledge, curiosity, and power have long travelled together, sometimes uneasily, across the world's most guarded thresholds.